We believe natural gas is a friend, but it really isn't. It has horrible side effects. It explodes, it kills trees by suffocating them, it replaces the carbon dioxide in the earth with methane, and the trees cannot process the methane, so they slowly die. It leaks. There are many leakages here documented in Arlington, and when it leaks, it's 86 times more toxic than plain old carbon dioxide. And when it's produced in Pennsylvania, when it's fracked, it pollutes the air, and not only the air, but the water as well. And we use too much of it already. We need to wean ourselves off of it if we're ever going to get to net zero by 2050.
Now, let me ask you a question. You said toxic. You mean not that it's poisoning us, but it's doing something to the atmosphere itself?
It's creating the global warming effect 86 times faster than carbon dioxide.
So this is, it's collecting in the atmosphere and trapping energy at the Earth's surface. Is that what's going on?
That's what's doing, yes. Now, in all fairness, it will dissipate over 20 years, but 20 years takes us to 2040, and we need to be by net zero by 2050. So we need to stop using it as fast as we can.
Now, let me back up a little bit and say you're wearing a shirt that says?
Elders Climate Action.
Okay, is that a local group, or what is that?
It's a national group, but there's a local chapter, and I am a member of it. And we are supporting one of these three bills. Well, actually, we're supporting all of these bills in the legislature.
Now, you're also wearing a shirt that we can't see, which says what?
Mothers Out Front, and they're supporting two of these bills.
All right, so when you say these bills, tell me a little bit of what you're talking about here. There's certain legislation that's pending?
Yes, it's legislation that was filed in January. The first one is called the Future Bill. Now, it turns out here in Massachusetts that many of our gas infrastructure, natural gas infrastructure, has to be replaced. And it's going to cost us $9 billion over 20 years. So people got together and said, perhaps there's a better way of using that money to replace the pipes with something that's doesn't have natural gas.
So you're talking about pipes that are underground and tanks and valves and everything to do with the entire way that the gas goes from wherever it comes from to our homes.
Yes. So they looked around and discovered in Scotland, Stockholm, they use a different kind of heating system. It's called district heat, which is actually hot water. And Stockholm has more or less the same climate that we have here. And it's hot water that's heated with clean energy. Clean energy does not pollute, but it may have side effects, like hydro, for example, may keep fish from being able to get back to their nesting grounds.
Right.
But it definitely lowers the carbon footprint of the heating system. So Mothers Out Front got into law the monies to pay for two pilot programs here in Massachusetts that will experiment with replacing these pipes, these fossil fuel pipes, with hot water pipes, and to see exactly what will happen, how expensive it'll be, how complicated it is, how et cetera, et cetera.
So as a homeowner, instead of paying the gas bill, I'd be paying the hot water bill, so to speak?
You would be paying the hot water bill. Hot water does not explode, it does not kill trees, it does not pollute the atmosphere, and it doesn't, it's water. So that's one of the bills that we're pushing.
And you can't cook with it, but you would use it to heat your home.
No, you can't, exactly. You don't cook with it, it's for heat. The second bill that Elders Climate Action is supporting is called the Roadmap Bill. And that is, there are so many ways that we can lower our carbon footprint. What's the best way to do it here in Massachusetts to keep our economy thriving in an equitable way? So what you would like to do is to put some very brilliant thinkers together with some good simulation and work back, use a backcasting method, start at 2050 and work your way back and find out what do we need to do now in order to make sure we make it to 2050 and have net zero emissions. And you need to have an agency that will make sure that this is constantly monitored, it gets implemented, and if you discover things are not working, then you start looking for other solutions. That's called the Roadmap Bill, and Elders Climate Action is pushing that because we want to make sure we really get to net zero by 2050. And the third bill is called carbon pricing, and that is you ask people to pay a price for the carbon they use because it pollutes, and the money will be returned to the people who pay it, or especially if you're a low-income person and would have an undue hardship by paying a lot more for your gas, you'll get back a fair amount of what you pay, and perhaps all of what you pay in. But people can afford to will discover their gas is getting more and more expensive, so maybe they should switch to something that's electric. And over time, it will work at helping people become aware of the carbon they're using, and also make them aware of other options that they might have to heat their homes, to drive around, etc., that are not carbon polluting.
So this legislation is just here in Massachusetts. Anywhere else in the country, who knows what they're doing at this point?
Just here in Massachusetts, and there are a couple of bills, one in the Senate and one in the House, so they're different. But they have been filed, and there's a lot of discussion about how to make them into law.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions that I have, but I mean, the overall cost is going to be borne somewhere. In other words, to make these changes, we have an awful lot of existing housing stock, infrastructure of gas pipes, other electrical infrastructure, and so on. A lot of it's very old. My house, for instance, is 100 years old, so I'm self-employed, so nobody can figure out how much money I make. It varies so much from one year to another, and government programs have often left me without an option where they think that I should be able to pay for something I can't pay for. And that's what I'm worried about personally. How do you, I mean, if it's a government program treats everybody uniformly.
No, none of these programs actually do. They all include a component called environmental justice, which means you look at a lot of factors in determining how much someone can pay. However, I will also mention that DeLeo, who is head of the House of Representatives, has put forth a $1 billion over 10 years proposal to pay for sustainable changes in the way we do business. So some of the monies might come from our taxes. I don't know yet. There are lots. That's a very good question, but those are very valid concerns. But they are being looked into and will be hotly debated. We want to make sure this is fair and equitable for everyone.
Thank you, I'll bet. I mean, when it came to medical insurance, it was awful because they said, oh, we're having health care for all, and they weren't at all. The people who were self-employed like myself, we ended up at the bottom of the barrel, and I ended up go uninsured for a long time as a result. In this case, I'm not going to be able to go live without heat.
No, I understand that, and that's also another reason why you should get involved with working on the legislative process to make sure your voice gets heard. But people are trying to be fair. Absolutely, all these bills are involved with being fair about how we change, because it is going to cost, but we need to do it to save our planet.
Well, thank you for filling me in on this today.
You're more than welcome.